The one-star review. The greatest indignation available to an obese man-child such as myself to offer as a slight against a game. A true memento mori whispered in the ear of the complacent game dev, daring to remind them that they are mere mortals and will someday die. Heavy is the hand that types the review. To the poor game that has received such a review, know that I will not show mercy or restraint, because you are total garbo and you ate up like a few hours of my time, and I didn't like it very much. I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is, fuck Luftrausers. Luftrausers is an arena shmup similar to Defender. The playing field loops to the left and right, but has clouds and oceans as barriers that limit how far the player can travel vertically. Players are able to collide into multiple enemies or projectiles before they die rather than just a single collision, and can regenerate health by letting off of the fire button for a bit. The trouble comes in when it becomes apparent that those things are all there is. There's very little intelligence behind the enemy spawning patterns, and actually dodging bullets is more of a matter of chance than it is a test of skill. Playing the game for survival exhibits the same problems previous Vampire game, Super Crate Box, had. Nothing can actually kill you if you're only trying not to die, so, as in Super Crate Box, you default to playing for score. The scoring system in Luftrausers is a boring multiplier that increases with kills and drops after a certain period of inactivity. And since the multiplier can't be kept up by damaging larger enemies, it drops pretty much immediately if you can't get a quick kill. Players will find themselves staying up in the air, battling planes to keep their multiplier up, as planes eventually stop spawning. That's about where the second battleship will spawn. The battleship is slow, uninteresting, and tedious, and by the time the planes are gone, there's 5 of them. The only thing I dislike more than fighting them is knowing that I'll have to fight them every time I get into the groove of playing this game. The player has to stop to fight ship enemies near the water, which will damage all but one type of engine. Attempting to fight the battleship with hit-and-run tactics is risky and does not do satisfying damage to the battleship in the brief time you pass by. So now your run halts, and you're forced to slowly bob and tilt as you hover around the battleship and just pepper it with as many bullets as you can. And hey, if you do manage to sink the battleship, then congratulations! Now you get to fight a blimp, which is exactly like an upside-down battleship, but harder! To make matters worse, progress is locked to achievements bound to each ship part. The effect of this seemingly innocuous structural choice is that the game feels like a fucking free-to-play grind, but without the option to pay the developers to make the pain stop. Early in the game, achievements are trivial and progress is gained quickly and often completely by accident. You'll experiment with ship parts and discover effective ways to kill the 5 or so enemies in this game. As you do this, you're constantly unlocking new ship parts and finding out which weapons are effective at accomplishing certain goals. After a while though, this rush slows down, and you find yourself bogged down trying to accomplish achievements that require specific spawning patterns that you have little actual control over, with loadouts that are not good at doing what you're trying to do. A higher difficulty mode with faster spawns for priority enemies like blimps and aces is available, but it can only be used to accomplish a second tier of achievements designed specifically for it, senselessly limiting you to long, frustrating rounds of weaving through battleships with a pea shooter in hopes that a blimp spawns before a laser ace kills you instantly from off-screen. Nothing in this game is sustainable, which was probably an intentional choice. Sure, these mechanics make the player out to be a hyper-disposable killing machine that exists only to gather data to fuel further research, but while they're successful at communicating some interesting context about the game world, they're utterly unsuccessful at creating a realistic, relevant challenge reminiscent of the arcade classics. Because classic arcade games were usually about a time-to-credit ratio, there was usually some sort of imminent threat from the game. This not only keeps the flow of players and tokens moving through the machine, but it gives the arcade games their irreplaceable feeling of fighting against the odds. In Pac-Man, it was ghosts that actively seek out the player and can kill him on contact. In Defender, it came from the timed, location-specific objectives that the player had to accomplish. And in shmups, that urgency comes from the auto-scrolling screen constantly pushing you into harm's way. In this game, it's just not there. Late-game enemies will eventually overpower you, but they'll often do so by firing salvos of bullets or lasers from off-screen. A simple radar would have helped immensely to give the player a better sense of his surroundings. But even as it stands, these attacks would have been avoidable if you weren't forced to stall your ship in order to focus your attacks on the battleship or a blimp to accomplish an objective. Aside from that, you can often fly straight to the left or right forever, and harder enemies won't even spawn until you kill the little planes. Luftrausers go for the 100% game structure is more akin to that of a modern console adventure game, but it lacks the content and game balance required to keep that sort of structure interesting. Ultimately, this design leads both developer and player to consider survival and scoring to be meaningless compared to those objectives that unlock content and allow the player to see more of the game, which is why Luftrausers fail so utterly when played for survival and scoring. This model is not arcade authentic, and the carelessness in design makes the meager game that's expected to stand entirely on mechanical complexity feel like it's missing something crucial. Perhaps the most infuriating thing about Luftrausers is that there is some genuine artistry on display here. The graphic style on the menus and character art is daring, innovative, and hilarious. And of course Vlambeer's signature frictive screen shake and color inversions are here in full force. The music, what little there is one of the most memorable themes in indie gaming. And the way the little plane is controlled is unlike anything else. A sort of tank controls for an aircraft that's wild, maneuverable, and hefty all at the same time. I can praise some individual features of Luftrausers in a vacuum, but unfortunately, when I look at it as a complete game, I just can't. Luftrausers initially impresses with the promise of a mechanically tight and meaningfully customizable action game, then later expects you to give up because it's super hard when the game finally starts to buckle under the weight of its inadequacies. I don't know who you are, or what kind of games you're into, but you can do better than this. Luftrausers was a wearying, embarrassing, and frustrating experience that didn't respect my time. That's why it only gets 1 star.